Imagine marching dozens of kilometers under the sun, carrying almost 30 kilos of armor, shield, and weapons, only to, at the end of the day, dig trenches, set up camp, and still be ready to fight. That was the daily routine of a Roman soldier. But no legion could function without fuel. Before the sword came the bread. Before the battle, the food. Food was not just a physiological necessity. It was part of the strategy, the discipline, and survival. Today we are going to discover what Roman soldiers ate to keep going during exhausting marches and brutal battles. If there was one thing guaranteed in a Roman soldier's bowl, it was wheat, known as frumentum. Grain was the backbone of the military diet and made up between 60 and 75% of the total weight of the rations. Each legionary received his portion of raw grain, ground it manually with small portable mills, and then, at this point, carefully prepared his food from that. The most common practice was to turn the wheat into a kind of porridge, flatbread, or an extremely hard and dry biscuit called buccellatum. It was made only with flour, water, and salt, and was baked twice to ensure its resistance to moisture. It was so hard that many soldiers needed to soften it in water or wine before they could chew it, but its durability made up for it. It could be preserved for weeks while on campaign. Barley, on the other hand, was treated completely differently. Although it was technically edible, it was considered inferior, food for horses. Receiving barley instead of wheat, practice known as frumentum mutatum. It was a punishment. That gesture carried psychological weight. For a legionary, eating barley was almost like wearing a stained uniform, a symbol of shame. And although grains provided basic sustenance, real energy came from a richer, tastier, but much harder to obtain source: meat. For a Roman soldier, meat was a privilege, not a guarantee. Unlike grains, which were distributed regularly, meat required effort, opportunity, and often improvisation. During long campaigns, legionaries could not rely on a constant supply from Rome. They had to be self-sufficient, and one of the most ingenious ways to obtain meat was through hunting. Deer, wild boar, hares, and rabbits were the most common prey, and the activity went beyond nutrition. Hunting was a form of military training. Hunting required patience, silence, group coordination, and endurance. Exactly the qualities needed on the battlefield. It was a real exercise where failure meant going hungry. But Roman soldiers also knew how to be pragmatic. When they conquered new regions or villages, they did not hesitate to confiscate the local livestock: oxen, goats, sheep, and above all, pigs. Pork was the favorite of the legions, cheap, abundant, and incredibly versatile. Its meat could be salted, smoked, turned into sausages, hams, or bacon. Nothing was wasted, not even the fat, which was used to cook other foods. Beyond its practical uses, meat also had a symbolic and ritual role. Before major battles, it was common to perform religious sacrifices as part of the sueva terilia, a rite that involved the slaughter of a pig, a sheep, and a bull. After the ritual, the meat was distributed among the soldiers. But a legionary did not live on meat and bread alone. To stay healthy, the Roman legions relied on something even simpler. In an army that was constantly on the move, simplicity was a virtue, and legumes were its ultimate expression. Lentils, fava beans, and peas made up a fundamental part of the military diet, especially among soldiers of humble origins. Rich in plant-based proteins and easy to store, these legumes could be cooked quickly and combined with wheat to make soups or thick stews that were both nutritious and satisfying. They were versatile, accessible, and required very few resources to prepare, ideal for life under tents or in improvised camps. Alongside them came the vegetables. Although they are rarely mentioned in literary sources, their practical value was indisputable. Archaeologists have found remains of ancient leek, onion, cabbage, turnip, and even garlic in Roman military settlements. These vegetables were hardy, could be transported easily and efficiently, and could even be grown around the camps. In addition, they provided vitamins and fiber, helping to keep the soldiers healthy and prevent digestive problems. Fruits, on the other hand, were scarce and almost occasional luxuries. When available, they were usually dried figs, dates, or raisins brought by local traders or gathered in the regions through which the legions passed. They were sweet, nutritious, and highly energetic, but they were not part of daily life in every campaign. A curious example is recounted by Polybius. In the midst of an extreme famine, King Philip V managed to obtain a shipment of dried figs to feed his troops. A small gesture, but one with great impact enough to restore strength and lift morale. These foods not only provided nourishment, but also broke the monotony of flavor and added variety to meals, something crucial for maintaining sanity and morale during prolonged campaigns. Among all the elements that made up the Roman diet, cheese was perhaps the most underestimated and, at the same time, one of the most valuable. It didn't require large fires, pots, or complex preparations. It was simple, light, and efficient. Exactly what a legion needed. Made from cow, sheep, or goat milk, cheese provided an essential dose of protein and calcium, but its greatest advantage was its durability. It withstood the passage of time well, could be transported in small portions, and unlike meat, did not need to be salted or smoked to be preserved. During excavations in ancient Roman camps, archaeologists found cheese presses and tools used in its production. This indicates that, on many occasions, the soldiers themselves made their own cheese during extended periods of rest. It was a food made by them and for them, almost artisanal, a point of stability amid the harshness of military life. Moreover, it was extremely practical. It could be eaten while marching, during brief pauses between maneuvers, or even during night watches. And as the perfect accompaniment to cheese, the next item was never missing from a legionary's table. On campaign, eating was essential, but drinking was a matter of life or death. Constant hydration was a daily logistical concern for the Roman army. Each legionary carried his own container, either a leather water skin or a metal canteen, and camps were always set up near sources of drinking water, such as rivers, springs, or wells dug by the troops themselves. However, drinking untreated pure water was risky, especially in unfamiliar regions. The Roman solution to this problem was ingenious. Posca, made with sour wine or wine vinegar diluted in water, sometimes with herbs, honey, or spices added. Posca was the standard drink of the Roman soldier. Its acidic taste helped eliminate microorganisms present in the water, preventing infections and intestinal diseases. The vinegar acted as a natural preservative, and modern studies indicate that the mixture was rich in antioxidants and vitamin C. For the Roman elite, Posca was considered a drink for the lower classes, but among the legions it was valued almost like a magic potion. Light, easy to prepare, resistant to heat, and energizing. It was, in essence, the sports drink of antiquity. Behind every victorious battle, there was something that rarely appears in heroic chronicles: logistics. And among the elements that ensured the survival of a legion on the march, two unassuming ingredients stood out: salt and olive oil. Salt was much more than a seasoning. It was a preservative, currency, and, in a certain sense, power. Thanks to it, meat could be preserved for weeks. Fish and vegetables could survive a long journey between provinces. Salt was so crucial that some historians claim the word salary comes from salarium, a bonus given to soldiers to buy salt, given its enormous importance. Without salt, the army simply came to a halt. Olive oil, for its part, was the wild card of the Roman food arsenal. It was used for cooking, dressing, and preserving food, but also as a balm for the skin, helping with cleansing, wound healing, and protection against the cold. Its amphorae, often marked with inscriptions indicating origin and quantity, were transported in large convoys. Wherever there was a Roman legion, there would also be olive oil. The accounts of Pliny, Vegetius, and other ancient authors reinforce the constant presence of these items in military provisions. But who was in charge of all this? The answer demonstrates the magnitude of the machine behind the war. There were centuries dedicated exclusively to logistics, men responsible for ensuring that there was water on every march, that each soldier received his ration, and that nothing was wasted. The diet of Roman soldiers was not a feast. That strategic simplicity was one of the secrets behind the longevity of the legions. Every item carried was part of a gigantic system where food, logistics, and efficiency went hand in hand with courage, obedience, and brutality. If you enjoyed diving into this lesser explored side of Roman military life, leave a like, subscribe.